Hey, everybody. Welcome to Buddha's Center. It's Thursday night, and we're talking about Lama Tsongkhapa's source of all my good, foundation of all good qualities. And I'm really psyched about that, that we get to talk about this over and over again and have the opportunity to look at it deeper and deeper and deeper in terms of what we already know about it, and then seeing the depth of each one of those stanzas through the magnifying glass of various commentaries, and other works that Lama Tsongkhapa did, including the big work, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, to really get us to the place where we know what Tsongkhapa is talking about in this little 14 stanza poem that we know Pabunka breaks into 4 different categories. But before we get into the text, we have a lot to talk about tonight about the Bodhisattva vow and so forth. We left off in the secondary Bodhisattva vows. We knew there were 18 root and 46 secondary Bodhisattva vows, making for a total of 64. And we looked at those and we got to number 23 of the secondary vows last week. So I want to get back into that and complete the Bodhisattva vows so we can move on in the text. But I also don't want to sacrifice the preliminaries or any of the other things that will be necessary for us to successfully be able to actually someday, if we aren't bodhisattvas already, become bodhisattvas and then take this beautiful bodhisattva vow that's necessary for us to have our bodhicitta grow into the mind of a Buddha, basically. So the way we're going to start getting our minds to go from where we're at right now to grow from here into the mind of a Buddha is to calm it down a little bit, make it more realistic, and try to get ourselves to a place where we're focusing only on the teachings so that we can really derive the most benefit from this evening's class. If we have a very busy mind that's scattered or that's kind of sleepy, that's not clear, then we won't really be able to get the most benefit out of tonight's class. If we're distracted with other things other than what we're talking about, we may miss exactly what we're going to need in order to advance ourselves in our spiritual path. So it's a very short period of time to try to point our minds at some information. If we were in a college class or we were, doing something where we had to take a test and there was going to be a grade, we would need to pay attention and make sure that we were focused in on the class. And there's nothing that we've ever done in a course that was more important than the information that we're studying right here. There's nothing we've ever heard about mathematics or science or any of these other things that we had to pay so much attention to understand that had any kind of close to the level of importance to the things that we're talking about tonight, because those things can maybe help us at a mundane level, help us, from day-to-day life with certain things, maybe have some temporary happiness and so forth. But the information that we're listening to tonight is information that will allow us to have permanent happiness, allow us to have permanent freedom from suffering. So this is information that isn't common information. And common information we're so ready to pay attention to and focus in on, to learn about the latest gadgets and to learn about all the newest things and ways that we can get sucked into samsara more and have more dissatisfaction and drink more salt water and have more tears shed from our eyes. So we're so willing to invest our time and our energy into looking at information, which will invariably cause us to have more tears and cause us to have more dissatisfaction. We're willing to make that kind of investment for something so purposeless. So why wouldn't we make such an investment and pay so close attention to something that could bring us to a state of a freedom from all of the types of suffering we could ever imagine or have ever experienced, and bring us to the highest state of happiness that we can experience? And we know that our mind can have perfect bliss. We know that our mind can have the absence of all types of suffering. It just has to be brought to those places. And the pathways that we're learning about tonight are the exact pathways that we will need to engage in to bring us to those states, bring us to the state of perfect happiness, bring us to that state of a complete, perfect absence of suffering forever. So it's such important information. We need to make sure we're not missing any of the details. All of the details are pertinent. If we haven't realized the details that come before these bodhisattva vows, then we certainly aren't in a position to have a mind that could serve as a suitable basis to have the generation of a bodhisattva vow happen. So it's so important that now we calm our minds down enough so that when we glance through the source of all my good and we look at all the stanzas that lead up to these bodhisattvas vows, we can truly think about them, analyze the kind of intent that Lama Tsongkhapa had, and see, using Lama Tsongkhapa's stanzas like a mirror, see if our minds resemble the realizations that are presented by Lama Tsongkhapa in this amazing poem. Do our minds resemble what's contained in that basket we find in the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity? These teachings are things that transform our minds into thinking the way that these texts are written. We will think like the authors of these texts. Our minds will be the same, have the same patterns of thinking as these great beings, because their ways of thinking tallies with reality. So as we get closer and closer and closer to actual correct view, our minds will be working like holy beings' minds. So what we see written in these books will be how our minds work. So it's really a beautiful thing to have the opportunity here to talk to you about something that could do such damage to the self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to the self-cherishing attitude that brings about every single type of suffering and misery that we have. And at the real subtle level, that self-grasping ignorance causes the wheel of cyclic existence to turn over and over and over again through those 12 links of dependent origination, from ignorance into the compositional factors in action, and then into consciousness, where those seeds and imprints are planted of virtuous and non-virtuous actions in our minds that then give rise to concordant results in the future of some sort. And because all of the virtues that we engage in at this point are so imbued with this self-grasping ignorance, so imbued with the misapprehension of the nature of reality, even our virtues, if they're not directed, if we aren't properly thinking of the absence of inherent existence of action, agent, and object when we're engaging in them, become causes for higher realm rebirth within cyclic existence. So it's very, very difficult to undo this thing called cyclic existence. And the only way it will be undone is to start undoing it step by step, and not be discouraged by how long and how much it's going to take and how much effort you're going to have to put in. One of the mental conditions that are necessary, mental, states of mind that are necessary for the bodhisattva vow to arrive, is this willingness to endure hardship, for the sake of the Dharma. So let's try to get to that place where we have all of those conditions, all of those factors in our mind that will allow for our mind to have first the aspirational bodhicitta arise, and then be able to take the bodhisattva vow and have that engaged bodhicitta. But we know underneath all of that beautiful talk and that beautiful mind that loves everyone and wants everyone to have happiness so much, and just can't stand seeing the suffering that others have, we know that we first have to recognize our own condition and develop renunciation, which comes before that in the text and in the sections that we talked about before this section on the great vehicle and the stages of the path for beings of great capacity. We talked about the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity and small capacity that show us how to generate renunciation that is the foundation for the beautiful mind of bodhicitta that we will all eventually have. We will all eventually be bodhisattvas. We all have Buddha nature, and we all have a mind that's empty of inherent existence and isn't stuck as dirty, isn't in the nature of being sullied. The mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied. The mind is empty of inherent existence, so it can dependently originate into omniscience if we create that which dependently arises into omniscience by relying on a path that dependently originates into omniscience. So let's calm ourselves down and try and get ourselves into a more realistic place, so that we can get our minds to dependently originate into great love, great compassion, this mind that wishes to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and a mind that recognizes the true nature of reality and has as its object of observation the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. So let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, which we've gotten into many times before. Try to keep your back as straight as possible. They say like a vertebrae, like a stack of coins, and we'll then begin to focus on the breath. So we're going to keep the focal object the same thing that we always do in all of the classes. I want to make sure that we have consistency and we have consistent exercises that we can do to help us calm down, help us to first generate some virtue by thinking about Buddha Shakyamuni, and give us some tools to use after this class moving forward, so we know how to breathe in and out and count the breath to get rid of our conceptuality, to calm our minds down. We know how to kind of focus on a front generation image with our mental consciousness and that image alone, because we've done this kind of exercise. I know we're combining it, we're multitasking, we're breathing in and out and counting and relying on the image of Buddha Shakyamuni as we always do. But this is just an exercise that you can then take to your own practice and use these techniques and tools for whatever goal you're trying to reach. If it's just trying to calm your conceptuality down, breathing in and out and counting the breath is the tool that Buddha Shakyamuni taught. If you want to try to have a fixed single pointed concentration, also there was Buddha Shakyamuni taught that you could focus on the breathing, but most of the great masters talk about taking an object of observation such as a Buddha, as we talk about an arm's length, the size of the thumb, eye height away, and focusing only on that in great detail in a fixed way, in a static form, or focusing directly on the mind, directly on the empty mind. But that's for very, very kind of higher scope practitioners who can, use emptiness to gain their single pointed concentration. But there is a way to do that. And Rinpoche said you could use deity yoga, self-generation deity yoga, to establish single pointed concentration. So I don't ever want to make anyone think that this is the only way to do it, or, you could only focus on Buddha. There's a lot of different techniques, Buddhist techniques, non-Buddhist techniques to achieve shamatha. This isn't something that Buddhism has the market cornered on. Shamatha meditation, fixed meditation, samadhi, achieving levels of samadhis and clairvoyances. We find this in many, many different traditions and many ways of doing it. Many ways of sitting and postures, even in supine, however you say it, position, you see meditations that are done. So this is just one form, one technique, and one that is very often presented. So 7-point Vairocana posture, our focal objects will be breathing in and out and the counting to calm our minds down. And we're going to just try to have our minds focused on Buddha Shakyamuni, the front generation, Buddha, beautiful, radiant, and glowing, but fixed in that way. Nothing's moving around whatsoever. You want to keep that image fixed. And if for some reason you see your mind getting sleepy, or you see your mind going all over the place, say, okay, I told my mind that I was going to only focus on these things. Now introspection just caught. There's a spy in my mind that just caught me. And I'm not doing what I told my mind to do. My mind is not doing what I said to do. So then mindfulness brings it back to those things, those 4 things: breathing in and out, counting, Buddha Shakyamuni. So let's do that for a moment, get our minds a little calmed down, and then we'll go from there. So wonderful we could all be together tonight, talk about the stage of the path. Khensa Rinpoche would be so happy. We're so fortunate to have this human basis. Smile and rejoice in the fact that we met with a truly qualified teacher. Khenser Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is in this world. Geshe Dorje Damdu is here. All these incredible beings, Umzala Geshe Aga, they're all here to elucidate one specific thing. A statement that Lord Atisha made that is so important, that encompasses all of the teachings that Lord Buddha ever gave. Understand that there are persons of three capacities: small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify or to distinguish their characteristics or their defining characteristics. We're so fortunate to understand what those three capacities refer to, and that we're here tonight to understand them more fully. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni, who's been in a very fixed form, now starts to erupt with bliss. And you see him become so animated and so happy that we're here engaged tonight in exactly what he came in the world to show sentient beings how to do, how to become completely free from suffering, and how to become completely reliable to all sentient beings in the universe. And by doing so, by becoming that being, how you would achieve complete bliss forever. So we're doing exactly what we need to do to achieve those aims that Buddha came to this world to show us how to achieve. So imagine that Buddha is so happy that the work that he came in this world to do has reaped fruit, and more fruit, more and more beings are becoming realized. Now imagine that Buddha is so happy and that Buddha has been containing the entire merit field this whole time, and that all the holy beings have been contained within Buddha Shakyamuni. And now imagine there's an explosion, and that the entire merit field now is suddenly in the space in front of you. Imagine you see all the holy gurus, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas right there in the space in front of you. Any of the beings you consider holy, Buddha Shakyamuni is still there right in the space in front of you. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, imagining Khenser Geshe Wandak, smiling, so proud that we're continuing to talk about the teachings for beings of three capacities. Imagining Geshe Lobsang Gompo and Khenser Rinpoche Genjatso, and imagining Demalocha Rinpoche, Geshe Dorje Damdu, Umzala Geshe Aga, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin, Ani Tupten Chodron, Jeffrey Hopkins, all these holy beings who've been so kind to take so much of their time to make sure that we can understand the Dharma. These very, very holy beings we've had so much contact with. Rejoice in the fact that this has happened. Imagine them in the space in front of you. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Chado Rinpoche, all these incredible beings who are with us and who aren't with us anymore in physical form, that did so much for the Dharma. Imagining all of these holy beings right there. Imagining the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Vasubandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha. Imagining Lama Salimpa and Atisha, all the holy beings. Imagining the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Chandrakirti and Arya Deva and Shanti Deva. Imagining Baba Vega and Kamala Shila, Chandrashita, all these holy beings in the space in front of you that we have so much of the connection to, all the grounds and paths and all of the understandings of the Vinaya and logic, the understanding of the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. When we look at these two lineages that we just spoke of, all of these beings that were so kind to us, that were just mentioned, when we look at these beings, we know that all that we know about what I just mentioned about grounds, paths, phenomena, logic, and the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena is because of these holy beings and because of their kindness. Imagining again Lama Salimpa and Atisha, imagining all the beings of the lineage of blessings passed down from, imagining Vajradhara right there at the top, And imagining then Saraha and Machipa and Tilopa and Naropa and Lotsawa Marpa and Milarepa and Gampopa. Imagine these holy beings were so affected by, they were so kind to show us the nature of the mind, this clear light mind. Incredible. Imagining the Atisha passing all the lineage of the Lam Rim down to the holy lay being Dron Tompa. Imagining the 3 old Kadampa lineages that we're so connected to, that we know about the Lam Rim at various levels because of. Imagining the holy beings of the Nyingma, such as Padmasambhava, the Sakya Pandita, Kaju, the Karmapas, and the Galupa lineage, such as the Lama Tsongkhapa and Kirtubje and Jelsubje, Pension Sanandrapa, Basu Chuji Jetson, Jayan Sheba, Janjai Rupi Dorje, Gonjo Jimmy Wambo, 7th Dalai Lama. Imagining all these holy beings. We've talked about them so much. Rinpoche taught their texts so much. When he gave the teaching on the 4 interwoven commentaries, we heard Basu Chuji Jetson. We heard about Jayan Sheba. We're so connected to these beings. I promise you, rejoice in the fact that among the billions of human beings, you're connected to beings who have presented pathways which will show every single sentient being in the universe how to be free from suffering forever and how to achieve bliss forever, how to become the most reliable guides in the universe forever. Imagining all the beings of the tantric, the 4 classes of Tantra. Amazing. We are now born into a time when Tantrayana is in our world. If we practice the foundational things that are necessary for us to practice in order to really engage in Tantrayana, then Tantrayana is like a jet airplane compared to a bicycle if we want to get to Buddhahood. And Rinpoche always said that. It's the swiftest way. We could do it in one lifetime if we put in enough effort, if we have the right previous karma, if we have the right imprints, we can in this one lifetime, because Vajrayana is in our world, achieve the state of Buddhahood. And in millions and millions of eons, it is said that there will be 1,000 Buddhas that will come and only a few will teach Tantrayana. And we live in a time where there is Tantrayana, but the only way that it will work is if we practice the foundational practices that are necessary for Tantrayana to work. And we're doing that right now by engaging in the teachings, by listening to the teachings for beings of 3 capacities that land at the teachings for beings of great capacity that first start at the perfection vehicle and then land, as we'll see later on in these teachings, on the great tantric vehicle. Imagining the beings of the highest yoga tantra, yogic tantra, performance tantra, action tantra, all the 35 Buddhas in the space in front of you, imagining all the protector deities in the space in front of you, Vaishrayana, Kalarupa, Dharmaraja, Mahakala, all the Dharmapalas, imagining Palden Lamo, all these holy beings are in the space in front of you. Smile, rejoice in the fact that you are so connected. Your family lineage of spirituality goes through all these incredible beings. The Dalai Lama's teachers are all these incredible beings. Khenser Geshe Wandak's teachers are all these incredible beings that we mentioned in the extensive deeds lineage, profound view lineage, and the lineage of blessings. We're so fortunate that we have authentic teachings, authentic paths that we've been presented with. There's so many perverse views that are taught in the world, so many things that are presented as authentic view that aren't authentic view, but we are connected to a pure lineage that goes all the way through the Nalanda masters back to Buddha Shakyamuni himself. Now we're so blessed, but so many sentient beings are unfortunate and don't have the same opportunity that we do. We don't know where they all are. We know that there's all these different realms of cyclic existence that the Buddha presented. We can only see our human realm and our animal realm. These other realms we, can't be so sure of, but the Buddha presented them as real. And there's so many things that we don't know, and we later on come to know as being true with our own eyes, that we have to say, oh, the Buddha was so reliable in presenting so many of these other things. There must be other realms in the universe that I don't know about. And these other realms in the universe contain beings that the Buddha says were previously my mother, were previously my brother, were previously my sister, were previously my closest loved ones. And every single one of these sentient beings in the universe took care of me when I was most vulnerable, I've merely forgotten. And all I can see is what's in front of me. And I think about this life only. And I think about who took care of me and I care about in this life. And I would do anything for them. But if I would just stop forgetting that everyone has served the same kind of role in my life, then I would have this same feeling of affection and connection to every single sentient being in the universe. Because the Buddha stated that since beginningless time, I've had lives, and I've only been alive 50 years, and there's been beginningless time. I've had these beginningless lives, beginningless relationships, and I've had these connections with every single sentient being that are as close as every connection that I feel is so strong in this lifetime. I have merely forgotten. I have this cloudy mind because I haven't woken up like the Buddha. And when I think about the people in this lifetime that I care about, that I love so much, I don't want them to be harmed in any way. If they could have just a 1% more happiness, I would do anything to make that happen. How could I go about making that happen? How could I go about removing your suffering? What could I do to make you more comfortable? I feel this way about the people that I love so much in my life, that I feel connected to. I don't want them to suffer. I don't want them to have any kind of hardship. And when I start to make my mind bigger and bigger and bigger with the practice of bodhicitta, with the teachings that Lord Buddha gave us, my mind starts to feel that way about every single sentient being, and starts to recognize that every being has taken care of me when I've been so vulnerable. And every being I've felt that blissful love for at some point in time or another. So there's no way that I could really have any bias if I made my mind more intelligent, more wise, and bigger. And if I don't want the people in my life to experience any kind of suffering, and I understand that because of the pervasive compounded suffering, I myself, my consciousness, because I have afflictive obstructions, will be forced again and again and again into a contaminated set of aggregates until I get rid of the self-grasping ignorance. So I will be forced into these contaminated aggregates and have to experience among the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, and the 3 types of suffering, and at the root, that third suffering, the pervasive compounded suffering, being the mastermind behind all the types of suffering. And at the root of that mastermind, we find the evil self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to the whole mess. So if I want to get rid of all of the types of suffering, and they're pretty bad when I start to study the First Noble Truth, I have to engage in what I'm doing right now. I have to listen to the teachings, give some teachings, study the teachings, meditate on the teachings, analyze the teachings, etc. I have to engage in all of these things. There's no way around it. There's no shortcut. There's nothing else that will help me become a Buddha except learning exactly how to become a Buddha and engaging in the pathway that will make me become a Buddha. Nothing else. So likewise, all sentient beings who now I recognize I'm as closely connected to as the person I love the most in this life, have to do that work in order to be free from all types of suffering. And if in this life I don't want you, this person next to me that I love so much, to experience even a finger prick, as I said before, then how could I ever be okay with you experiencing the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, separating from pleasant things, meeting with unpleasant things, not getting what you want, suffering mentally, suffering physically because you've been forced into a position? How could I be okay with that? And when I think about how could I make you stop having those 8 types of suffering, I see the only way that you could stop having the 8 types of suffering that I couldn't bear to see you have to experience. If I could just watch it all, if I could just watch my loved one who's so closest to me, having to just, as I am right now at times, experience sickness, experiencing aging, as I will have to experience, one of us will experience the death part, as some of you have. And it's so painful, but this will happen. The only way I can stop that ever-present, ongoing, perpetual suffering that just goes so fast, and we're moving through these sufferings so fast, is to figure out how to get you to hear what I'm listening to tonight. So let's imagine that we're more advanced. Let's imagine that we're the beings we will become and that we could connect to every single sentient being in the universe. And let's bring them all here. Bring all the hell beings, all the hungry ghost beings, all the animals you can imagine, all the humans, all the demigods, all the gods. Imagine every being in the universe has been brought here because you are so connected to every being in the universe. You love every being in the universe so much because now you've recognized that the way you were thinking before was just small-minded, was just ignorant. You previously thought all these people were strangers or enemies, and now you recognize that they've taken care of you when you were so vulnerable, and you've connected to that time and recognized that you love them so much. You're so attracted to them in terms of wanting to help them. You can't bear to have them not have happiness. You can't bear to see them suffer. So this is what you're thinking about. You're trying to connect with this idea that you can't bear to see any of them not have the highest amount of happiness possible. You can't bear to see any of them not have the complete freedom from suffering. And the reason you can't bear it is because you recognize that you have this love through the force of attraction because you've meditated on their great kindness. You've meditated on the need to repay it and so forth, and done, some of the previous meditations. Such as equanimity, recognizing sentient beings as your mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness. And now you have this love that you're so attracted to these beings because the veil is dropped and you see that all sentient beings have been so caring towards you in previous lives you've merely forgotten. Now all sentient beings are here. All beings in the universe, all the holy beings that are the ones that are thus gone to bliss are all here. All of those holy beings are here. Imagine that even the Hinayana Arhats who still have the obstructions to omniscience are here, ready to listen to whatever they need to in order to generate the mind of Bodhicitta and go through the 5 Mahayana paths and get rid of those obstructions to omniscience. So even the Hinayana Arhats can become the most reliable guides in the universe. So imagining in this kind of big level, let's stop thinking so small. Let's make our world so much bigger so that when we go out in public, these kinds of things we're talking about now snap in our mind and we look at people and start to see, I care for you so much. I should care for you so much. I'm so connected to you. I've merely forgotten. And the more and more we do this, as we interact with folks in our daily life, the more and more what is real becomes real in our mind. Because currently we think that these things haven't occurred, and wrong view is believing something that is true isn't. And we have had these relationships, and the more that we recognize that these previous lives are true because we've done logical analysis, not because of blind faith, the more our thinking will tally with reality, because wrong view is believing something that is true isn't. So with that in mind, what is ultimately true is what is presented in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma at the Heart Sutra. So now let's imagine that we're leading all sentient beings in this chant of the Heart Sutra. Imagine that all the holy gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are so full of bliss, almost raining down nectars and light rays on us of happiness that are almost like blessing us and all sentient beings' mind and allowing us to understand emptiness more clearly, allowing us to understand the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena, allowing us to understand the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, path of seeing, the path of meditation, the path of no more learning more easily, allowing us to understand the emptiness of the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning, helping us to understand that even the Buddha, even our Buddha nature, even our mind is empty of inherent existence. And because our mind is empty of inherent existence, it can dependently originate into omniscience, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect power, and perfect skillful means. And it's because of the miracle that the Buddha showed us about our minds, that our minds aren't stuck in this place that always has to suffer, that we should rejoice. It's this Heart Sutra that presents the key that unlocks the door to everything that is wrong. And that is what is presented here. And that's why I said at the beginning of the teaching, We really need to be open vessels and really be listening to this well and not have any holes in our pots and not come in here the contaminated kind of thinking, because we're talking about what will directly change everything in the way that we really want it to change. Everything's always changing. So do we want it to change from a little bit of contaminated happiness that's dissatisfactory to horrible suffering, to a little suppression of that horrible suffering, to something that we think is happiness that's just a little suppression of horrible suffering? And it's not really true happiness because we've been happier before. So this happiness we think is happiness has suffering within it. The only way we can really undo this state of existence that's so dissatisfying, that's so full of suffering, is to take this ignorant mind that creates all of it and smash it to bits with wisdom. And that's what we're trying to do. Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity, no purity. There is no decrease, no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, conscious, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate buddhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. I prostrate to the gatherings of Dakinis in the 3 chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space by your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation. Look after practitioners like a mother looks after her child. Kala jubene jodamba nengoje duchu ngai dudo jendru babo lama yibo jinzi nezun kandro solasha zelo aga samara tashandata samara. Aga sambara jashadara sabara yave de ata ongate kate parakate parasangate badizo baba kocha soji kai de bidoji she lobodoji bebodoji shiva doji jagi baji metu bishi sanji she de kaye soya geri no jade she wada meto no beje nandra wada tumbon jim bonzon zonjoji doji e joden dode lejo. By the truth of the existence of the 3 jewels, may all inner and outer hindrances and adversities be overcome. May they become non-existent. May they be pacified. May they be completely pacified. May all negative forces opposed to the Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from all adverse conditions to the Dharma. May we obtain all circumstances conducive to the Dharma. May there be auspiciousness, happiness, and well-being here, right now. May it be so. So now we'll do a mandala offering, a request for teaching. And remember, requesting the teacher to teach, but just imagining it all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni in terms of lineage. Because teaching is only happening because of all the holy beings and this lineage that goes all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready. A shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha, Gautama, I pay homage. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sanje Jadanja Janala, Janju Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Juji Bezonanji, Drala Benji Sanje Jubajo, Sanje Jadanja Janala, Janju Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Juji Bezonanji, Drala Benji Sanje Jubajo. Sanje Jodan Zoji Jonan La, Janju Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Juji Bezonanji, Drala Benji Sanje Jubajo. If you're attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Hello again, here we are, looking at this beautiful text that Lama Tsongkhapa was so kind to share with the world, the source of all my good. And Khenser Geshe Wandak was so kind to always lead with the Lam Rim and to always make sure we knew how important the Lam Rim is. So let's not, without any further ado, if we could screen share.
Can you enable screen share, please?
I sure can.
Thank you.
I'm getting pretty savvy at these sort of things nowadays. I'm just kidding. I don't even know how to work a computer. It's really pathetic. As time goes by, I notice how more and more pathetic my inability to work a computer is too, as I need to for things. As I need to do fancier things. I don't have the skill set. All right. So there it is. We're enabling screen share. That'll be great because I'm going to be working out of a couple of different texts. So if I can look at it on the screen, that'll be fantastic. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. So we know that the source of all my good encompasses all the teachings that Lord Buddha ever gave. So it's pretty neat that Lama Tsongkhapa was so skilled at instruction and such a great scholar that he was able to put all of Lord Buddha's teachings into this very, very short poem. And we know that, of course, this isn't all Lama Tsongkhapa did. He wrote so many different size works in terms of the Lam Rim. He taught he wrote the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which is the largest Lam Rim. And then he wrote the medium stages of the path to enlightenment, which is the medium Lam Rim. And then the Lam Rim Nyamjor, the Lam Rim Duden, the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, which is the smallest Lam Rim, the most condensed Lam Rim. But then there are these other short poems, such as the Source of All My Good. And then we have the three principal paths that also modeled kind of after the way that the Lam Rim is presented, although the three principal paths by Tsongkhapa doesn't follow in such an easy pattern to identify as such the source of all my good or the abbreviated stages of the path. But if you are skilled in instruction and you are skilled in being able to see how it all fits together as a puzzle, you can take the three principal paths, and you can take Sachen Kunga Nimpo's parting from the four attachments. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner, etc. And then you could take the source of all my good, and you could take, all of these texts, the three principal paths, and the teacher's lamp for the path to enlightenment, and you could see how they're really all seamless, and they're all talking about how a being achieves first the ability to get rid of attachment for this life, and then how to get rid of attachment for samsara altogether, and then how to develop bodhicitta. And then what one will need either way, if one is just renouncing cyclic existence and wanting to achieve liberation for himself or herself alone, or wanting to become a Buddha, the wisdom is the exact wisdom that he or she will need. The object, which is the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena, will have to be realized. So we see the ripening paths of renunciation and bodhicitta presented, but then the liberating path being the wisdom realizing emptiness. So, whether we're speaking of it in terms of renunciation, and we know that the small and medium scope serve to explain that, or we're talking about it in terms of bodhicitta, where we know that the great scope explains that, or in terms of the wisdom realizing emptiness correct view, we know that the medium scope and the great scope both need that. So it's just a way to really start to kind of put all these pieces of puzzles together that you can only do if you've looked at this over and over and over and over and over again. And Rinpoche taught us so much, so many different texts to show us how to weave, the Heart Sutra and Kamalashila's stages of the path to enlightenment, and the Lamrim Chemo, how to weave it all together and to understand how to make it all make sense. So I have a tiny bit of ability, hopefully, to make it all make sense. So I'm going to try to share that with you tonight. So we start with, Pabonka Rinpoche says, first you have to start with the first category is, how to find a Lama, and then how to serve and follow him or her properly through, through thought and through action and so forth. So Pabonka says the first category is the Lama is the very root of the path. And this is how you take on a teacher, and then how to serve them. So that's the first category. Then the second category, of course, we've talked about so many times, what you do once you found a teacher, and then advice to take essence of this life, because you have such a good thing to work with, a good spiritual basis to work from. This human basis is so incredible. And then what you could do with it. And then we see the teachings for beings of three capacities presented. And then the teachings for beings of great capacity, not only the perfection vehicle presented, but the Vajrayana teachings presented at the end. So this text is really, really something else. And then the third category is the requests so that you can attain all the favorable conditions for succeeding in the path and to stop all the circumstances that might prevent you from doing so. And then the fourth is that prayer, that all my lives, you're never separated. You're always taken care of by a Lama, and you can gain the strength till you can reach the end of all the various levels and paths. So we'll get into those last two categories once we get to the last couple stanzas. But really, we're in the great scope now, and a lot of the stanzas moving forward will have to do with the great scope before we get to those aspirations that Pabonka talks about in the third and fourth category. So first category, how to take and find a Lama. So it says, the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him or her in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him or her with all my strength and reverence. Okay, so that's the first category. Second category, what do you do once you found a Lama? Here's just the first advice. You should take the essence of your life. That's the first thing you should do. Think about doing something good with this human basis that you have. Bless me first to realize the excellent life of leisure I found just this once. It's ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. And a lot of times, even when we think about ourselves becoming, having future lives, we're thinking about it in terms of us. Jeff. Jeff's just going to be Jeff again in this future life. We're not thinking about slug. We're not thinking about hell being that has no connection to Jeff whatsoever, except has a consciousness that stores the imprints that Jeff's made and has no recollection of Jeff whatsoever. We're always thinking of, oh, in my future lives, I'm going to be Jeff. I am. I feel like that. Maybe you do too. I feel like, oh, when I die, then I'll go here, then I'll go there. Yes, I will, but I won't be the I that I'm thinking I am at this moment. It'll still feel just as me, but it won't be Jeff. And all those other options out there will feel just as me. Those lower realms, those horrible rebirths will feel just as me as Jeff, and Jeff will be something that's just as far off as, do you remember what happened 3 lifetimes ago? That'll be Jeff. That'll be that distant memory. Why? Well, my body and the life in it are fleeting. So now we get into the small scope. We get into the section that Lord Atisha says is about, know that those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. So looking at Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, which is the root text for Lama Tsongkhapa's text, the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And this text really condenses the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, as well as the great treatise on the stages of the tantric path to enlightenment. So we can see how Lord Atisha's text serves as the seed for all of these points that we're making. So I want to show, as the breakpoints happen, Atisha's quotes about those breakpoints. So it says, know that those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. So I will not remember I'm Jeff. When I die, I'll be an I that's clinging to me as somebody else, and I'll believe 100% I'm that being just as much as I believe 100% I'm Jeff right now. And when will that happen? Who knows? Why? My body and the life in it are fleeting. Small scope begins here. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrong of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Now we get into the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, or the medium scope teachings. And Lord Atisha says this: those who seek peace for themselves alone, turning away from worldly pleasures and avoiding destructive actions, are said to be of middling capacity. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teaching. So here we see the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. We don't find out how to achieve a cessation of suffering of cyclic existence altogether until we get to the teachings for beings of medium capacity, because the teachings for beings of small capacity show us only how to get rid of the suffering of the lower realms of cyclic existence, and how to set up a foundation to get rid of all of the realms of cyclic existence, and how to become Buddhas eventually. So we're seeing now that this section is showing us the 3 highest higher trainings, which allow us to cut the origin of suffering out, which allows us to get rid of the truth of suffering. So the 4 noble truths are presented here because the 4 noble truths have to be presented, because it's the suffering that we identify and the origin that we abandon that has to happen. And the only way the origin is abandoned is by relying on the path of the 3 highest higher trainings. And once we do that enough, we have cessation, which is the end of our suffering altogether. So this is what this medium scope is talking about. Now we get into the great scope. This is the section that we're in now. This first stanza deals with aspirational bodhicitta, and then the next stanza deals with engaged bodhicitta. So Atisha says, those who, through their personal suffering, truly want to end completely all the suffering of others, are persons of supreme capacity. So it says that because you know about your own suffering, because you know that samsara is horrendous, you're repulsed by it, 8, 6, 3 sufferings, you don't want them. You look around and you see every living being, everyone who has been your mother, brother, sister, closest loved one, as close as the person in your life right now who would take care of you no matter what, no matter how vulnerable you are, they'll protect you. Who was that? That's everyone's been that. Every living being, my own mother, they've fallen in too. I know that I have this thing. I just can't believe. I have fear of cyclic existence. That's one of the causes of refuge. And I have faith that Buddha is a reliable guide, and I can definitely emerge if I rely upon these teachings. And everyone that I know, every living being in the universe, even the ones I don't know, because I've forgotten them, has this same problem. Now make me want to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Make me truly want to end completely all the suffering of others, as the teacher says. That's a person of supreme capacity, of great capacity. Then it says, I've slipped and fallen into the sea of the suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. So here it says the wish. Wish here is aspiring bodhicitta. Shantideva says there's, planning to go and then going in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Here, this is the planning to go, this wish. And then the bodhisattva vow is when you actually go, and then you actually practice those 6 perfections and the 10 perfections. That's the actual engaged bodhicitta. But you have to have this mind, the mental basis of aspiring bodhicitta, as we learned in Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, the necessity for the arisal of engaged bodhicitta is to have the mental basis of aspiring bodhicitta. You have to have the mental basis of the path of accumulation. You have to have the Mahayana path of accumulation, have entered it in order to actually move from aspiring bodhicitta to then take a bodhisattva vow and have engaged bodhicitta. You can't get a bodhisattva vow unless you're a bodhisattva. You have to have aspiring bodhicitta, which day and night wants to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, to actually receive a bodhisattva vow. But we take them over and over again to put these imprints in our mind, to have facsimiles of them in our mind, to have conditions in our mind, connectivity to these things in our mind, so that we become more and more immersed in these kinds of thinking, so that eventually our mind will think like that for real. We'll think day and night about becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings for real, because you have already generated a realization that wants to day and night seek transcendent liberation that's called renunciation as a foundation. You've recognized all of your own suffering. Those who, through their own personal suffering, truly want to end completely all the suffering of others are persons of supreme capacity. I don't want to go on much more than that. But now we're in the engaged bodhisattva, the engaged bodhicitta, where we talk about the bodhisattva vow. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I'm not well trained in the 3 moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Bless me, grant me then a fierce resolve to master the bodhisattva vows. So here we get into the engaged bodhicitta, the bodhisattva vow. Kamalashila's stages of meditation clearly says that, the aspiring bodhicitta is, right when this mind wishes to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. When you have the arisal of, wanting to becoming enlightened for the sake of others, this mind of bodhicitta, when that arises, this is an aspiring bodhicitta. And then once you take the bodhisattva vow, it becomes engaged bodhicitta. And usually that happens once you go from the small level of the path of accumulation to the medium level. There's 3 levels of the path of accumulation. And the first level is when you generate this aspiring bodhicitta. And then generally speaking, folks would say when you take this bodhisattva vow, once you have this, then you move to this medium level. But I'm sure there's differing opinions about that, but that's one opinion that I wanted to share with you. So the bodhisattva vows we have 18 root and 46 secondary vows. So we already talked about, it says, training in the three moralities. And we talked about what those three moralities are already. It's the morality of in abandoning non-virtue, the morality of accumulating merit or accumulating, and then the merit of working for sentient, the morality of working for sentient beings. But let me look at it in the text. I don't want to miss anything. Okay, so okay, here we go. Morality of keeping oneself from committing wrong, abandoning non-virtue, morality of collecting goodness, and the morality of working for every sentient being. So I think that's what I said. So now we're in the, if I'm not trained in the three moralities, I can't become a Buddha. So we talked about, first, general morality, such as abandoning the 10 non-virtuous activities. Buddha taught general morality for all people. And then there's specific morality that are specific to individuals who take specific kinds of morality. And there are specific kinds of morality, such as the individual liberation vows called the pratimoksha vows, the bodhisattva vows, and the tantric vows. So these are individual choices, types of vows that people could take, sets of vows you could take. And these different sets of vows that you can take are presented by Lord Buddha, but this is a personal decision on the different levels of vows and what you would want to take. But then there's the common thing that Buddha said that everybody should do, and that's to abandon the three non-virtues of the body of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, the four non-virtues of the speech, of lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and gossip, and the three non-virtues of the mind of covetousness, harmfulness, intent, and wrong view. So those are the common things. And then the pratimoksha vows are the seven kinds of individual lifetime vows that the Buddha presented, such as the two layperson vows for man and woman. Those are two. The male and female novice, monk, and nun vow, 4. Probationary nun vow, 5. And then the fully ordained monk and nun vows, making for a total of 7 lifetime vows. These are the pratimoksha vows. One set of vows called individual liberation vows that a practitioner can take once he or she says, I definitely want to emerge from cyclic existence. This is why they're called individual liberation vows, because the individual has decided that he or she will engage in any type of ethics that's necessary in order to achieve liberation. So this is why they're called individual liberation vows. Second set of vows, the bodhisattva vows. This is what we've been talking about. Bodhisattva vows, we went over. There's 18 root, 46 secondary vows. You can take aspiring bodhisattva vows, but then there are the engaged bodhisattva vows. And this is what we're talking about. There's aspirational bodhicitta ceremony you can take, where you say, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. And you're just aspiring and you're planting that seed over and over again so that you eventually will actually think that. It won't be contrived. You'll actually believe it and think it in terms of universe sentient beings. And then there's the bodhisattva vow that you can take. And we take them over and over. Anytime you take a tantric initiation, you take a bodhisattva vow. But are you a bodhisattva? If you are, you receive the bodhisattva vow and it's in your mental consciousness, and it will carry forward to your next life as a vow. Or it'll carry forward as an imprint, as an intention to later become a ripened being who's a bodhisattva, to be able to actually get the vow. So it's wonderful to take them over and over and over again, and I highly suggest it. So what's Jeff been talking about? Let's see what Lord Atisha says. Having developed the aspiration for enlightenment, constantly enhance it through concerted effort to remember it in this and also in other lives. Keep the precepts properly as explained. So, if you want, to not lose your bodhicitta, because when you first get bodhicitta, there's a time period where you could lose it. You could fall to the lesser vehicle. You could say, I can't do it. It's too much. All these sentient beings are too much for me. And you could actually lose it. Once you get to the medium level, you can't lose your bodhicitta, but you could lose it. So you have to reinforce it over and over again. So it says, without the vow, this is Atisha's text, without the vow of engaged intention, perfect aspiration will not grow. Make effort definitely to take it, since you want the wish for enlightenment to grow. So it's saying that even though you have aspiring bodhicitta, it's not going to grow until you take this bodhisattva vow. That mind's not going to become big enough to be Buddha. It needs this. It needs this thing. It needs these ethics. It needs the abandonment of these negativities to be taking place actively in order for it to get bigger and bigger. Because these things that you're abandoning and these things that you're engaging in that are presented in the bodhisattva vows and the 6 perfections are all about working for others' needs, all about putting others' needs before your own and working for others' needs. So those who maintain any of the 7 kinds of individual liberation vow have the ideal prerequisite for the bodhisattva vow, not others. So we talked about that, Panchen Sonandrapa, general meaning of perfection, that this doesn't mean that you can't get a bodhisattva vow unless you have an individual liberation vow, because individual liberation vows can only be taken in the human realm and gods can take bodhisattva vows. But it's saying the best possible condition for you to be in, the best possible position and the condition that you could have is for you to have among the 7 types of individual liberation vows as a human: lay vows, novice vows, fully ordained vows. And it says here, then the best is the fully ordained vow. So it's saying the best way, the best, basis for getting a bodhisattva vow is the fully ordained vow. But, as a class of best, the 7 individual kinds of individual liberation lifetime vows really serve as an ideal kind of basis or prerequisite for getting the bodhisattva vow. But don't misunderstand. We learned in Panchen Sonandrapa's text that this is saying ideally, but you can get it, you could get it in other ways. But the ideal position to be in is the human basis. And we know that even bodhisattvas in pure lands pray to be born, pray to come to our human realm, because it's the best place to become enlightened, because you can see suffering, you can hear suffering, you have sentient beings to help, but it's not so bad that those sentient beings won't listen. And a hell or an animal, how much can you do? How much can you do? There's so much suffering, so much pain, so much confusion and ignorance. How much can you do? But this human realm is a place where the bodhisattva dwells to help, because there's so much helping that can go on. So this is the point that's made about this human basis and the human basis being able to take these pratamoksha vows, and these pratamoksha vows serving as an ideal prerequisite for the bodhisattva vow. So all this stuff we've been talking about is all connected. And this is why Pabunka is talking about the 3 moralities. I cannot become a Buddha if I don't practice the 3 moralities. Well, here we're talking about, these morality of gathering, of getting rid of non-virtue. And then we see that we need to engage in these moralities of individual liberation, bodhisattva, and tantra if we want to become a Buddha, because we can't become a Buddha unless we practice tantrayana. We can get to maybe the 10th bodhisattva ground and then in the perfection vehicle, and then Buddhas will come and give us initiations, but we will still at that point need to practice the completion stage of highest yoga tantra. So we're very fortunate that we're in a position where we've gotten these bodhisattva vows in tantric initiations and have these imprints to be able to connect later. According to the ritual described in the chapter on the discipline and the bodhisattva stages, take the vow from a good and well-qualified spiritual teacher. Understand that a good teacher is one skilled in the vow ceremony who lives by the vow and has the confidence and compassion to bestow it. However, in the case you try but cannot find such a spiritual teacher, I shall explain another correct procedure for taking the vow. So I'm going to stop there because I want to go back over to the vow. But we see the connectivity to Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment in every single way, and why right in Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, when the first category is basis, right? Den. And it's physical and mental basis. And the mental basis, what's the first? It goes over physical basis for achieving the bodhisattva vow. And it says any of the, for the physical basis for achieving aspiring bodhicitta. And we see that the physical basis for achieving aspiring bodhicitta is any among the 6 realms of cyclic existence. And then the physical basis for achieving the engaged bodhicitta then becomes a little bit more refined. It's human in higher realms. We don't have, and not all the higher realms, you don't always have that same physical basis for achieving the bodhisattva vow. So this discussion of who can take a bodhisattva vow becomes important, because Atisha says, you have to have the prerequisite of the 7 kinds of individual liberation vows. And then that makes all the, if you read that literally, that makes scholars who recognize that beings who can't get an individual liberation vow can take a bodhisattva vow. So just some stuff that you could research more a little bit if you find it interesting. So last week we learned not to be, number 23 of the secondary vows is that we shouldn't be addicted to frivolous talk and gossip about sex, drinks, drugs, sectarianism, and so forth because of your attachment and desire for them. So we know that the bodhisattva has already thrown out this life, thrown out samsara, and has put all others' needs before their own, and is only day and night figuring out how to become a Buddha. So it's easy for him or her, because they have calm abiding. They have these special qualities to be able to just keep these vows untarnished. So we see them as like, oh my word, how could we ever keep these? Well, we probably can't. That's the catch. And that's why we practice and practice and practice. But a bodhisattva can keep these, because a bodhisattva day and night wants to get out of samsara first and has renunciation. Then he or she develops bodhicitta and day and night wants to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And anything that's hindrance to that happening as quickly as possible just is thrown out like the garbage. So it's easy for a bodhisattva to refrain from these things, but all beings who still have afflictions can get lost for a moment. So the bodhisattva vow has these things so clearly in their minds and the forefront at all times, so they never get lost, so that they're always perpetually engaging in virtue. Number 24, not making an effort to study the means for attaining single-minded concentration. Not eliminating the distractions that block your meditation. So you see that there's a lot of things here that we're practicing before we're these highly realized beings, because somebody who's highly realized has already figured out how to eliminate distractions, in a lot of ways. Seeing the exhilarating good feelings and other benefits you obtain from meditation as being ends in themselves and being attached to them. This is a big thing. Meditation can start to give you physical, tactile, good sensations, and you can just get stuck in a place that's like a drug. Just meditating, watching my mind, feeling my thoughts, feeling my body, feeling this, feeling that, and going nowhere spiritually. Just having an experience. Just like watching TV, but it's an experience that's a little more subtle. And it feels good. So you've got to be careful to not get stuck on that. Neglecting to study the Hinayana teachings in the Bodhisattva vow. So we see that where there are these divisions that are created that shouldn't be created, because the Bodhisattva studies everything, because all beings are not suitable vessels for the Mahayana. At that time, when you meet them, they may need teachings that are non-Buddhist teachings to get them, to the truth. Teachings that assert a true self to get them to a final view that there isn't a true self. The Bodhisattva becomes skilled in everything that can help everyone. Turning to another means of practice when you already are following an effective means yourself, for this would be like changing teachers and vehicles in midstream once you are on a steady and sure course to enlightenment. Spending all your time and energy on reading non-Buddhist teachings, which, although permitted and even beneficial for enabling you to understand and help others, should not be pursued to neglect the studying of Dharma. Pretty obvious. And it's not that we study non-Buddhist tenet systems like for a living as Buddhists. So it's not saying don't study non-Buddhist tenets, just understand Buddhist tenets so that you can differentiate between the two, so that you're not misunderstanding one or the other. It's just so you can be clear on the differentiation between why Buddha is considered the reliable guide and what has been presented by the Buddha that differentiates a reliable guide from not a completely reliable guide. A guide that will get you somewhere good, but completely reliable. We have to establish that the Buddha is the only completely reliable guide because of omniscience, great compassion. Favoring and becoming attached to non-Buddhist teachings, even when merely reading about them. So it's becoming attached to the idea that there's a true self, basically, is what this Bodhisattva vow is saying. because that's what it really boils down to. What's the differentiator here, folks? Is there Atman or not? Is there true self? Is there soul or not? Does Jeff have a soul or a self that inherently exists or not? Buddha says no. There's a big line of demarcation right there. So that's what it's talking about. It's not sectarianism, it's truthism. And you have to find out whether you think what Buddha said is true or not. I can't tell you, and you shouldn't have blind faith that I'm saying it. Cut and rub it and look at it thoroughly over and over and over and over again. And I think you'll clearly see that Atman falls apart, Creator God falls apart. All these other ideas of some kind of inherent existent external creator or inherent existent soul or self just fall apart when they're examined with logic and looked at closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. That object should be clearer and clearer and clearer. But unfortunately, as you get closer and closer and closer, that self that you think is there, that soul that you think that's there, that potential creator of imperfection by perfection can't possibly and logically work and is not tenable. So that's why rejecting the Mahayana teaching. So rejecting putting others' needs before your own and loving others and having compassion for others, praising yourself and belittling others in general because of arrogance and anger, not attending religious discourses, meetings, pujas, ceremonies, and so forth. And I think in the commentary, it talks about like if there's a teaching that you can go to, and it's you should attend it. You should really take every opportunity you can to transform your mind. And that's what a bodhisattva would do. So we want to act like bodhisattvas so we can become bodhisattvas. So we start to say any opportunity we have to engage in virtue that will transform our minds from a deluded, sleepy state where we grasp at a self as being inherently existent of person and phenomena, then have an appropriate attention and exaggerate everything around us, the self of person and phenomena, and then have the afflictions arise of attachment, hatred, and ignorance, and then have contaminated karmic actions occur because of our attachment, hatred, and ignorance that have been created by our exaggerated, inappropriate attention created by self-grasping ignorance. So we want to take every opportunity we can to smash self-grasping ignorance. Despising your teacher and not relying on his or her words, not giving help to those who need it, avoiding taking care of sick people. These are all numbered, by the way. You can tell the breaks. Not working to alleviate the physical suffering of others, number 37. Number 38. Sorry, I wasn't numbering them before. Not showing the teachings of the Dharma to those who are unaware of them and who work only for this life. I was really one of my main motivating factors to go on like TikTok and some of these other applications because, how many people are talking about the Dharma and talking about, and then we have how many people are talking about authentic Dharma with authentic lineage, that it wasn't just 6 months of study or a one book study. How many people are talking about those, going to a place, where, the Dharma isn't really found. And that's what motivates me to continue to go up live. And, I know only 1 or 2 people are really, staying on the whole time and only people are jumping in and out. But I know that I'm presenting something that's so incredibly important and so holy. So I'm trying to show the teachings of the Dharma to those who are unaware of them. And who work only for this life. Because I think if you look at social media, people are really doing a good job at working for this life only. Real good job. Look where I was. Look who I am. Look what I did. Only the good stuff, though. Look how great it all is. I promise this is who I really am. And Geshe Dorje Damdu says all these, these stars on all these applications. Spend a few hours with them and see how delightful they are. And then spend a week with them. See how delightful and how happy and how incredible their lives are. See if it tallies with reality. Okay. Not repaying the kindness others have shown you. Number 39. Number 40, not working to relieve the mental grief of others. 41, not giving material aid to the poor and the needy. Number 42, not taking care of your circle of disciples, relatives, attendants, and friends by giving them teachings and material aid. Number 43, not encouraging and supporting the practice of Dharma and the virtuous actions of others. Number 44, not praising and encouraging others who deserve praise. Isn't it so nice what bodhisattvas do? Somebody deserves praise, they praise them, and you broke your vow if you didn't. If you didn't praise that person who should have been praised, you just broke your vow. What an incredible being, right? That just going around loving people, caring for people, wanting to take their suffering away, praising them when they should be praised, teaching them in kind ways when they shouldn't be, and they should know how to change their behavior. So incredible. We saw Rinpoche do that. He did that with me. I'll tell you that right now. Not preventing those who are committing harmful actions in general, and specifically those who are a menace to the Dharma from continuing their harmful actions by whatever means are deemed necessary by circumstances. So we saw the invasion of Tibet happen. So I don't talk about stuff like that, but we know that there has been destruction of Dharma. In Russia it happened, and then it moved over into Tibet it happened. And, if we look at what has happened, through these systems of communism, and Stalin in Russia destroyed all the Buddhist monasteries, and Mao Zedong in China destroyed all the monasteries. So terrible. People who are just trying to live the way that we're talking, live by these ways of living, destroy that. So sad. I mean, it just breaks my heart when we read these bodhisattva vows, and to think that beings would want to destroy that, destroy this ideal. So sad. If you possess extra physical powers, not using them at the time of need. This has always been my problem. I have all of these clairvoyances and, extra psychic powers, and I don't use them in my time of need. This is a joke, everyone. I have none of those. I have no psychic powers or any of that. But I always get to the 46 Bodhisattva vow when I'm reading it, and I'm like, well, not going to have a problem with that one today. Yep, I won't have a problem with not using my extra physical powers. So, I got to read this last thing because it's about the vow, and I'll have to read it next week if I don't. How do you know if you've broken the vow? It's only one paragraph. There's 4 attitudes that all must be present, transgressing for a vow to be completely broken. Okay. 1, the first attitude, and this is standard. It's always taught after the Bodhisattva vow, so I have to teach it. I'm sorry if it takes like a few minutes extra. What attitude is the first attitude? You don't regard what you've done as a mistake. You don't think it was a mistake. That has to be there. Second, you don't turn away from thinking to repeat this action. Okay, so you've done something bad. It's not bad. And you don't say, I won't do that again. You don't turn away. Number 3, you rejoice and are happy about what you've done. You've broken a bodhisattva vow. You don't care. You don't want to, I don't care. I won't turn away in the future. I'm glad I did it. And then number 4, you're shameless and inconsiderate, and you don't care about the consequences for your action, for yourself, or for anybody else. So this just completely, takes apart everything you're trying to do, because you're trying to fulfill yours and all sentient beings' needs. What are you doing, not caring about the consequences of your actions for yourself and others? Because that's what you're trying to do, is work for self and others. And it says, if you break any of these bodhicitta vows, you must invoke the 4 opponent powers. Have you heard of those before, folks? Of declaring your previously committed non-virtuous actions in order to avoid experiencing their black karmic consequences. Then you must retake the bodhicitta vows at an appropriate ceremony. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you do not have bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Let's do the concluding mandala offering. We'll just do the Lama Tsongkhapa's. No, I won't. I feel like bad luck every time I say we're not going to read the prayer for the flourishing of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, because Nejong Oracle said it was so important, and then I said I'd start reading it, so I'm going to read this first. I felt like guilt just run over my entire being as I was going to skip it. So that's some carryover from my childhood, probably, of a different tradition. Prayer for the flourishing of Je Tsongkhapa's teachings, the Lozon Jyotema. Though he's the father producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Indraketa, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring praised his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage who gave him a conch and prophesied. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. His pure view, free of eternity and destruction, his pure meditation, cleansed of dark fading and fog, his pure conduct praised according to conqueror's orders. May the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. Learned since he extensively sought out learning, reverent, rightly applying it to himself, good, dedicating all for beings and doctrine. May the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scripture is definitive and interpretive or without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. Listening to the explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practice of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. Outwardly calmed and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages of practice, he allied without clash the good paths of Sutra and Tantra. May the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. Combined with voidness, explained as the causal vehicle, with great bliss achieved by method, the effect vehicle, heart essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles. May the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the three beings' paths, the quick darkening Lord, Vaishravana, Karmayana, may the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the accretive power of its patrons, may the conqueror Lozong's teachings flourish. The mandala offering is a thanksgiving for the teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lozandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes I've made, I apologize. May they be purified by this mantra. May your mind, body, speech, and mind be purified by this Vajrasattva mantra. Imagining Vajrasattva in the space in front of you, inseparable from your root lama, inseparable from Kensir Geshe Wandak, and imagining that white light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings and purifying your body, speech, and mind. Imagining white light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings, transforming into white ohms, purifying you and all sentient beings' body. Red light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings and transforming into red Oz, and purifying yours and all sentient beings' speech. Imagining blue light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings and transforming into blue homes, and purifying yours and all sentient beings' minds. And imagining that you are empty of inherent existence, the purification is empty of inherent existence, sentient beings are empty of inherent existence, Vajrasattva is empty of inherent existence, your root lama is empty of inherent existence. And we see that without this addition of the understanding of emptiness, of inherent existence, of all of these things that we're doing, we can cling to them and grasp them at them and reify them and just make them our new samsara, and not understand that they are a way out of samsara. They just become another kind of adaptation, another flavor of samsara, if we don't see the lack of inherent existence in all of these things that we're doing, but see that they conventionally, subjectively exist and work because of dependent origination. So Benza sa om benza sato samayama nubalaya benza sato zeno vajita dita meva vazuto gaya meva vazuto gaya meva vazuto anuragta meva vasava siddhi me braja savagama sucha mekidam chiyam kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan savatata benza mame moka benza baba maha samaya sapa Om Vei. May we always be protected by Paul and Lama. Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Jinjala Rama Rama Jada Jinjara. Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Jinjala Rama Jada Jinjara Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Jinjala Rama Jada Jinjara Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Jinjala Rama Jada Jinjara Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Jinjala Rama Jada Jinjara Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Jinjala Rama Jada Jinjara Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalara Jema Rama Jada Dunjo. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. Long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the embodiment of Chen Rezigan person in that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains. You are the source of all benefit and happiness. all powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. And now we'll do the prayer for Khenser Geshe Wandak that I wrote. I started writing it when I met Khenser Geshe Wandak, but I finished writing it on the anniversary day of his passing, March 6, 2023. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om, Ah, Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us to never be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar to our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound is stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all your teachers passed away and understood the sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. The spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our heart would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, Khenser Geshe Wandak. I just have to say, I know you're here all the time with me, and I know you hear this. Thank you. So I just want to say, on behalf of everybody who listened and felt like this had something to do with how you'd like to live your lives, thank Khenser Geshe Wandak too, because I'm only here able to talk about this and go on and on about it because of him. And imagine what he could do if I, this little bug of a Dharma practitioner and teacher, can do this. Imagine what if you never met him, imagine what he was like. Thank him. See y'all. Have a good rest of your week. Not much left of it. Thanks for coming on, Jay. Take care. Bye, everybody. Bye, Priscilla. Bye, Tara. Take care, everybody.